Inclusive teaching, supporting all students in the college classroom. Instructors' identities in the classroom.
Engaging in the kinds of self-reflection that ask you to compare how you think about your identities alongside your students can help provide insight into your biases and assumptions when it comes to supporting all students in the classroom. Self-reflection helps instructors identify areas in their teaching practice where their biases might be impeding their ability to include all students. It also helps instructors develop awareness of where they might need to focus their attention to increase inclusivity in all areas of their teaching.
Like students, instructors enter the classroom with a wide variety of backgrounds, experiences, and social identities that cannot be left behind at the door. For some instructors from historically marginalized populations, the classroom can be challenging in ways that instructors from dominant groups do not have to face.
Examining these positionalities and their impact on the classroom can be a challenging form of internal reflection, but it's important to reflect upon how these identities, our bodies, our presentation of self, and the information we choose to share about ourselves can impact how students perceive and connect with us.
Because I'm deaf, and because this is something that is fairly apparent, it's not hard to figure out that I'm deaf. I have fairly large hearing aids behind my ear. I work with sign language interpreters. The students know pretty much right away when I start talking, they can hear my voice. I used to feel like I don't want to say anything about it. I'm just going to act like this is all normal. This is all, and that strategy sort of backfired for me because I didn't talk about it. Students felt like they also should not talk about it. And it didn't challenge any of the sort of misconceptions that they might have about what they should do or not do. And it didn't really teach them what they needed to do differently. So now I try to make sure that I talk about it, specifically the sign language interpreter, right? So I might say, okay, there's a sign language interpreter in the room. I might look over at the interpreter at any point, but you don't need to stop talking, just keep talking, and the interpreter will pick up what you're saying. And just kind of creating that little bit of space. But I personally need to do that because of how apparent my disability is. Other people may have disabilities that are not immediately apparent, that may never be apparent. And so they have to do a different sort of decision-making process in thinking about what's the value or the purpose of revealing my disability to students. So I've talked to a number of people about this, and several people have written about it. And so just to name a few of the things that people say, some people say it's valuable to be open about one's disability, so that disability is something that, it's part of life. Lots of people have disabilities, and it's valuable for students to see that faculty themselves have disabilities. That it's not something that you need to avoid or that you should pretend that you don't have. Other people feel like my disability is relevant to the course content, right? So if you're teaching a disability studies class, if you're teaching a political theory class, and you're thinking about the way that a particular political theory might impact a disability population, right? There's all kinds of ways that people might see the relevance of disability, and sometimes it's valuable to share that identification. Other times, it's still, people don't want to take sides, or they don't want to be seen as making a kind of political statement. But as I've argued in an upcoming essay, just existing as a disabled person is a political statement, right? Because it says something about, I think disabled people should be allowed to have jobs. I think disabled people should have access to educational opportunities. But it's not as simple. I mean, these are all sort of positive things about where disclosure of a disability can have positive ripple effects. It can influence, students. But more often, I hear that people are more likely to disclose one-on-one with students So maybe a student in office hours is sharing a struggle that a faculty member might identify with. They may choose to say, I understand, and here's some strategies that I've learned for dealing with that in my own life. And I would say a larger group is more reluctant to disclose. And I think that that's a really valid choice, right? Because you don't always want your body or your disability to be the focus of conversation. You don't always want the conversation to turn to a debate about really yourself. And this comes up in all kinds of ways. Like I've had students point to me as an example. Oh, we have a disabled person in the classroom, pointing at me and using me as an example, and I just feel so uncomfortable in those moments, right? And some disabilities are not well received, right? Like that, knowing students as a group, knowing about a faculty member's disability might not necessarily be something that leads them to be more receptive or more willing or more sympathetic, right? It might be something that generates stigma or unwillingness or other kinds of issues. So it's really something that different faculty with different disability identifications respond to in all kinds of different ways. That it really is very contingent on the types of relationships and opportunities. And I think it's possible to signal to students your receptiveness, your willingness to consider disability, your attentiveness to accommodation, accessibility, and inclusion without having to specifically say, and I share or I have a disability identification. I think disclosure is valuable, but I also think it's very important for people to choose when and how they share that information with people.